Hi, I'm Miss Olivia, and today I kind of wanted to talk about the 4 different types of turbine engines and kind of what they're used for, or like what they're used in. I'm not going to go into depth on like how they work or the parts that they have or really anything like that. I'm going to save that for another video, or you can find someone else that dives into it much deeper than I am today. But I just kind of want to go over just the 4 main types. So without further ado, I guess I'll start off with the first one, which is a turbojet. Now a turbojet is typically an engine you'll find on an aircraft that is supersonic, or you'll find it in much older fighter jets. Turbojets have a difference between another engine that I'm going to mention here in a little bit, but turbojets typically have a more higher pressure ratio, and they have a better efficiency at going supersonic. They are less susceptible to compressor stall, which means that air is not getting to the compressor to keep the engine going, so the engine stalls. Turbojets you'll find those engines on things like the Concorde, the SR-71, the XB-70 Valkyrie. Like I said, older fighter jets you'll find those on. And they're not really efficient as to what we have today, but they do great on very fast applications like those airplanes that I just mentioned. Low bypass turbofans, here's where we get a little wonky. Low bypass turbofans, the difference between those and turbojets is turbojets suck air in the front of the engine and directly put it to the compressor. Turbofans, low bypass turbofans, have a fan at the front, and this fan will suck air in, bypass some of the air around the engine and out the back, while the rest of the air goes into the engine to go to the compressor, to so on and so forth. They are a little bit more efficient than turbojets, but they are a little bit easier at causing compressor stall, so there's that. But modern day fighter jets today and other aircraft like the B-1B Lancer use low bypass turbofans. Things like the F-404, the F-414, the F-18, the F-118, F-119, F-135, things like that. And then you've got, I guess I'll move right into high bypass turbofans. Now high bypass turbofans are just like low bypass turbofans, except high bypass turbofans have a bigger fan at the front and they bypass a larger amount of air. I should also note that low bypass turbofans can have an afterburner. High bypass turbofans cannot. And the higher bypassed air around the core of the engine helps cool the engine, but it not only does that, it helps with thrust as well. So it doesn't really need that extra oomph from the afterburner. But high bypass turbofans, you'll know what I'm talking about when I tell you that they are on things like commercial aircraft, like the Boeing 747, 787, A320, A380, you know, the big jet engines you see in images or that you see on those big airplanes, because they bypass a large amount of air. They are a little bit more susceptible to compressor stall than the last 2 engines that I had talked about. So they have their ups and downs. They are a lot more efficient than, say, a turbojet or a low bypass turbofan, but they do their job really well in helping out these larger aircraft. The C-5 Galaxy and the C-17 Globemaster, which is run by the military, those also use high bypass turbofans. So it's not just in civilian use, it's also in military applications as well. Now the next engine I kind of want to talk about, these next 2 engines have somewhat of a similarity to each other. There's only one key difference, and I'm going to mention that in a little bit, but the first one I want to touch on is turboprop. Now turboprop it's a turbine engine, so it runs just like the other engines we just talked about, except it takes that turning power inside the engine and puts it out to a shaft, a big output shaft that turns into rotational power, kind of like a drive shaft on a car, or a crankshaft, I guess I should say crankshaft. Typically, they won't have a transmission or a gearbox. It's just straight out of the engine output shaft, and you'll typically put a propeller on that, or a lightweight helicopter might use a turboprop. So things like the C-130 Hercules uses a turboprop. The A400M Atlas uses a turboprop. A couple other smaller helicopters like the Huey or like an ultralight helicopter will use turboprops. Now, turbo shafts are pretty much turboprops themselves. I mean, they're the same thing. The only difference is one has a gearbox and one doesn't have a gearbox or a transmission. Turbo shafts use gearboxes and transmissions to transfer power, either going this way and then up like a helicopter, or to a car or a train. Union Pacific actually had a locomotive for a while that used a turboshaft engine. It was called the GTEL, gas turbine electric locomotive, and it was all right for the time being, but that was soon dropped. Chrysler also had a car that was called the turbine car back in the 60s, and it used a turboshaft or a turbine engine hooked up to a transmission, and that put power to the back wheels, and that was kind of a thing for a little bit, but it was soon found that didn't really work too well. I'm hoping to change that soon. I'm working on a project that might change that, but we'll see. So turboshafts and turboprops, the main difference between both of those is a gearbox or a transmission. Other than that, they're pretty much the same. They take that mechanical power that's being created inside the engine and they put it to an output shaft. So hope you enjoyed that kind of video that I just made, kind of talking about the 4 different types of turbine engines. Soon I will make a video describing how turbine engines actually work and what makes them function the way they do. Of course, my editing is not the greatest. I don't have any editing software, so this is kind of just raw footage as it is. So you could probably find a better video out there of someone who describes it, but I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a good day.